All right, we are back after a little bit of a break. So, Mom, I'm going to change things up just a little bit. Are you doing okay so far?
What's that?
Are you doing okay so far?
Oh, yes.
I'd like you to, I wonder if you could tell us what you consider to be your greatest accomplishment in life.
Well, I would have to say my family. I feel as though they have been successful in the sense that regardless of their accomplishments, other ways, they are wonderful people. They're loving people and caring people and generous and all the things that you would want someone to be. And so that as far as I'm concerned, that's the most important thing. And that was something for which I do not take responsibility by any means completely, because I think their dad has been a wonderful example of the hard work that it takes to be the kind of person that he was. So,
What do you think it was that made Dad so special?
that's an interesting question. If I think of anything about him, he was a problem solver. He had to see something through to the end, no matter what it was. He had to figure out how it worked, no matter what it was. There was very little that he wasn't interested in. And he was a great reader, particularly about the Civil War. But the two of us loved to read and loved to talk about what we were reading. We had a wonderful time together. There was nobody that I would rather discuss books with more than your dad. And he just had a desire for excellence. He, if anything, we were opposites in the fact that he was very rule-oriented. He could no longer break a rule than the man in the moon, and I had a small tendency to cut corners. So we sort of kept each other in check that way. That was really funny.
And also, your love of talking about books with Dad maybe explains how you can remember so much about books. It's something that Chris and I always marvel at. Your ability to recount books that you've recently read and talk about them.
Well, I guess it's because once I get into a book, I feel almost as though I'm part of it. I remember one book I had been reading where I live now, and I kept telling the girls about it at dinner, and finally I said, with great relief I can tell you I finished the book, so you can stop thinking about that, because I just can't stop sharing what seems to me to be very interesting information. Anyway, aside from that, I was always at home when everybody got home from school. But on my own time, I worked very hard for the community. And I will have to say that there were not very many volunteer awards that I did not at one time or another receive, even for the city of Bridgeport, which was quite remarkable. And I particularly, for better or for worse, found that I was a very capable fundraiser. And so I must say that there was not a charity benefit that at one time or another I didn't chair, whether it was an auction, a charity ball, a decorator show house, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And so I can feel that I contributed a great deal through the money that these efforts succeeded in making.
Yeah.
And that is a very satisfying feeling.
I wonder if you could think about a time or a place that you would like to go back to and relive, either because it was such a wonderful time or because you would like to do something differently.
Well, I guess the most special time will always be the Old Post Road, although when we moved over to Harbor Road, I was surprised to discover that we actually lived a little longer in Harbor Road than we actually lived on the Old Post Road. But that is where everybody grew up. That's where I remember the experiences we had. And that will always be home, no matter where I live. That house with the memories of all of your activities is what still means the most to me. So I can imagine that's true of most families.
Mm-hmm.
And not that there weren't times of stress and concern in that house, as there is in every family. But by and large, it represented a lot of happy years. I entertained a great deal, and so we had all our friends there, particularly our Christmas Eve party where everybody brought their instruments and all the children came and people were racing all over the house.
How many people do you think came to those New Year's Eve parties,
Oh
those
my
Christmas
gosh.
Eve parties?
I can't even remember. It must have been, counting all the children and everything, I think at least 50 or so. When you think of all the different families, the Dowlings and the Wheels and so forth.
Right.
So it was a very special time. And then Easter, we always had an egg decorating contest with all the kids. So yes, that meant a great deal to me. Just as I'm sure the houses that you raised your children in, you feel the same way about them.
Right. So that's the past. Well, I wonder if you could reflect on what hopes you have for the future.
Excuse me?
Hopes that you have for the future, either for yourself, for your family, for the world. Think expansively about the future and what do you hope
Right
happens.
now?
Yeah.
I think hope is a strong word. I've reached the point that after all these years, I don't think there's been a time since I've been born that our country is not at war with someone. And you get to the point where you think it is not ever going to end because it doesn't seem as though world peace is an achievable goal. I can't imagine it, but it seems to be the case. You can't help but try to keep working in that direction.
Yeah.
I don't mean that, but I must say, I've gotten discouraged, certainly not in my lifetime. Hopefully, maybe in my children's lifetime or theirs, we'll come closer to it. But as long as we have as much disparity in the haves and the have-nots, we're going to have discontent. At the same time, we don't want a communist situation where everybody is made an equal. That's not the goal either. But we do need to try to help those that haven't got anything to better themselves.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to try to continue to stay interested and as involved as you can as you get older. Try to stay current with what's going on.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, Mom, one last thing. What would you like your family to remember about your life?
Well, being a parent or a grandparent is a very difficult thing. It's a balance where you want to let a child develop and make their own decisions, whether you know that it's going to be the right one or not at some point. They have to fend for themselves and make those choices. So the question is, when do you let go? Or do you ever really let go? And there is never a time, any hour, any day, when I am not thinking about my family and whether they're happy and safe, and probably it's something that I do too much. I wish I could be, as everybody knows, I am a worrier, and I sort of wish that that weren't the case. But my family, I'm sure that they have to know that how their lives are going is the most important thing to me. That's all I've ever really cared about. So that's all the satisfaction I need. If I've done that job, if my family has been grown successfully, you can't really hope for anything more.